you. I'm Sandy Monroe,
Hello.
intuitive life coach, and I'm here today with Parnuna Thornwood, and she's an empowerment coach. And we're so excited to be with you here today to talk to you about intuition. And you had some thoughts around that.
Yes, I just thought that we kind of started wanting to have this conversation because I am in the beginning. It feels like I'm in the beginning of embracing my intuition and consciously thinking about my intuition because I've never really done that before. And I know you, as an intuitive life coach, you have worked with intuition for quite some time. And I thought it would be a cool conversation to have between two people with different perspectives and, you know, thereabouts, right?
I do.
And
I love it. Yeah, I do get it. You're right. I've been an intuitive my whole life, and it's been an interesting journey because like I had little instances of it when I was little. Like I remember when I was 4 years old, I think 4 or 5 around there. We were getting out of our house, walking towards our car or minivan at that time. My mom had 3 kids, and
mm,
I all of a sudden get this feeling in my gut, and I had this thought of we're gonna be in a car accident. And
okay.
I'm like 4 years old, and I didn't think to tell my mom that. I didn't. It just felt like it was just kind of like a thought. Like I knew it was true, but I think a 4 year old doesn't really know what to do with that. Maybe you know.
No.
So, is I guess the best way I can explain it because I knew it was gonna happen. I knew all that stuff, and I just get in the car and I'm like bracing myself, and then it was just a normal grocery store thing. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like we've never done it before, right?
No.
But yeah, it happened. What happened was we were on the road, and out of nowhere, this car, it just like goes in, like where he shouldn't have because there's a car coming, like
Okay. Yeah.
here in America, it probably happens over there too, where people kind of, I guess, cut off or try to just go, even though there's cars sometimes.
Yeah.
And my mom didn't have enough time to stop, so we hit the car, and it was their fault, and my mom didn't get tickets or anything like that because we
Mm,
actually had witnesses see that, like, yeah, they just went when she was literally there. There's nothing she could do
mm,
about that, right?
no.
And so that's I think one of the first memories I have of intuition working for me in that way and knowing
Mm,
something.
mhm.
But so it's been with me my whole life, and it's like helped guide me. I'm just going to tell you a little story, and I think that maybe we can go somewhere with this because
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. I think everybody wants to talk about because it's like, how does it help me? That's cool, Sandy. You knew about a car accident, which, by the way, if
Mm,
I had known more, well, I would have known about the car accident, and I would have been able to delete that from my energy and do something differently. Because whatever you
mhm.
see happening doesn't have to actually happen. If you can
No.
change. But my husband the other day, so I was going to mention that. So my husband the other day, I don't know, like a week ago or something like that, we're putting our son to bed, and he says to me, I just had this thought today where um I never had cold feet, I never had anxiety, I never had any nervousness stuff going on when I married you. I just knew this was going to work out. And I was just like, so crazy the last couple of days, because I work with clients around relationships and stuff like that. Things are just always in my mind. I was like,
Mm,
that's crazy. I was thinking about it too the other day. I was thinking like how I just knew, you know what I mean? And I wasn't worried, I wasn't concerned, I wasn't anything like that. I also just knew, and it was like, oh, one of those moments where intuition works for you. And we've been that married for 12 years, right? So those are, I think, the moments that people look for. And part of the reason it was in my spheres, I had a client who wasn't sure that who the person she was, like that she really wanted to stay in the relationship. And the question I always ask a client is, can you see yourself married to that person? And she
mm,
said no. And I was like, that's your answer. And that's always been for me my answer in my own life. If I couldn't see myself married with that person, then I'm just wasting my time, right? And
mm,
sometimes
mm,
people do that. They want to just waste time with somebody for whatever reason.
mhm,
Um,
mm,
so that has always kind of been a part of my life, even when I got married. But then later, I began to work with it even more purposely asking more questions. And I
Like,
realized you can literally ask anything you wanted. And so for me, it's been like this stepping stone of of realizing you can do more and more and more with it. And now I'm to the point where I know without a doubt that intuition is wonderful, and one of its main mechanisms that you can use it for is for creating the life that you want, for being the
mm,
actual person in the driver's seat rather than thinking things just randomly happen,
oh yeah.
realizing that it's all in the energy and you can change
Hmm.
the energy. And so that's why for me personally,
I
intuition is
love it.
the most powerful thing that you can try to skillfully learn, to practice, to work with, if you really
Yeah.
want to live in alignment in your life.
I love that because I think I've reached the point where I actually understand that now, and it's such a wonderful place to be because like I've had these nudges throughout my life as well when I think about it, but I hadn't really thought about it as intuition. But when I'm thinking about it now, it's like it comes from a knowing
Yeah.
that everything works out for you if you just listen somehow, right? Like it comes like when you talked about asking a question or asking like the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, right? And
Yeah.
then listening to whatever nudges come to you in a way, right?
Right.
That's how I perceive the practice, and not necessarily having to understand what is going on or why this is the answer, but just following along as long as it feels right and aligned and good.
Mm-hmm.
And then magic happens. And I see that now. I'm starting to understand that magic
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
as I am starting to choose, stuff in my life that I just wouldn't do before because, well, that's not logical, or, but just following my intuition or
Yeah.
heart. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think it's wonderful. It's so magical, like when you think about it, but it's I think it's just because we've forgotten how it works as adults, or in this society, or I don't know.
Yeah. So how long
Yeah.
have you been practicing now, and you're starting to feel like it's magical? How long, and what made you start doing that?
Oh man. I don't even think I've done it for a year. I think it's less than a year,
Yeah.
or maybe half a year. I don't know, a couple of months, like actively, consciously working with my intuition as something that I trust and believe in. Because I come from a place, or I come from a space. My own space has been very skeptical and fact based, and we should be able to see the things that we believe in, or science and facts and square.
Yeah.
And it's been very hard for me to move out of that box and into just feel the more feminine, or the more feeling,
Hmm.
knowing space. So it's very recent, actually,
Yeah.
even though I feel like I've had gut feelings or nudges or downloads
Yeah.
basically all my life, right?
Yeah. I think everybody
Yeah.
has had nudges their whole life. I think, because I personally, in my work, I've never met anybody who hasn't. And I always say that, even when people say, they say that I'm not intuitive, it's like, but you are. And then like they think about it,
Mm,
they realized there were things they knew, like they knew they shouldn't have married that person, or
mm,
knew they didn't really want to be a nurse, or they knew, whatever it was, like they knew on some
mm,
level, they knew the something. And those are kind of like those body feelings, right, that people get
hmm.
in their
Yeah, but
gut.
yeah, why do you think? Well, now I just came up with something that, like, I feel like I come from this fact.
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
But why do you think that it's so hard for people, or for us, myself included, to lean into intuition, to believe that it's there, or to trust intuition? Why is it so hard for us? What do you think?
Yeah, the answer is simple. Um, my husband and I have had this discussion in different kinds of ways.
Hmm.
So in around the 19th century, we became a more modernist society where they decided to do away with all of the old information that was known. Anything
Mm.
that was using anything intuition related, like spiritual things, like a lot of that was
Mm.
just thrown off with the baby water, as they say. And we became a society that didn't want to acknowledge anything to be true unless it was researched, unless it was in
Mm.
some form science based. And it became the schism of like, this here's religion and this here is science.
Mm.
Um, so in terms of a lot of religions, they have a lot of truth, and it's often the reason people kind of have some semblance of connection with their spiritual self is because of their religion, right?
Mm.
That help them connect to a god, to their god, but we did away with all of that and just put it in this box and tried to say that religion is here and it's completely different from science. And during that whole time, there were philosophers and people who wrote books and who did talks who tried to say that the world wasn't split apart. The world is actually very connected and that it's
Mm.
all related. It's not math here, science here, spirituality
Mm.
here. It's all actually one. It's all actually connected.
Mm.
It all works together.
It's not
And that
either
was,
or.
mm-mm, it's not either or. And that, but all of that was just kind of, thrown off along with it with a lot of understandings of nature, and our place with it, understanding of food,
Mm.
and how to, eat it in a way that's more aligned to how we should eat. We just kind of threw everything away and thought that we knew better. It's almost like we're children, honestly. Uh,
Mm.
it's like we're children just saying, like, we know better. We know better than previous civilizations. And they were just being
Yeah.
super vicious when they
Mm.
talked about these things, because the reality is, I love to read about ancient civilizations. And the reality is,
Mm.
in Egypt, they did energy work. The Mayans,
Mm.
they did energy work. The Taoists, they did energy work. Yogis, right? They're doing energy work. So all of this has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and there's
Mhm.
it has a whole like wide history, and it just kind of depends on where you start, right? Because with the Mayans, they had their understanding of the world, and then the Spaniards came and they had their understanding of the world, and they thought that the Mayans were lesser than with their understanding of the world, that was savage, right? So that was
Mm.
applied down in that way, even though I read that they were very advanced and they actually even knew how to energetically soften the bones. Like if it was broken, they would
Mm.
soften it and remold it, resculpt it
Okay. Whoa.
energetically. So
Amazing.
they were actually extremely advanced in their medical science and in their way of life and everything that they were doing. But because it was different from what the Spaniards knew, they just, they thought all of that was from the devil, that all of that was evil. So there's
Mhm.
stuff like that going, even farther down in history. But then you go into the 19th century, and then that's where there was this really big, all of that going on, and it still exists, in our postmodern world, where we're still choosing to not see the body as a whole. Instead,
Mhm.
we'll see the mind as being separate from the body, and then spirituality being separate,
Yeah.
versus everything actually being connected. But there are more and
Mm.
more teachers realizing that it's all connected. And even within workouts, I do a workout where she
Mm-hmm.
said, you know, it used to be where people thought, well, you work out your arm or you work out your leg or you have pain in your back, and they thought of everything as isolated.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so if you have a pain in your back, you're going to be doing back stuff. But she's like, that's not really how it works. You're a whole organism, and we need to work you out holistically. Because even though
Mm.
you have pain in your lower back, it could actually be coming from your feet. You're not working out your feet enough. Actually moving them, because they get like in shoes and then they're like stiff, right? Rather than actually moving
Mm.
toes
Yeah.
and you know, we don't do that
Mm-hmm.
often enough. So or our knees, like the pain could be coming from somewhere else. So she actually looks at our body as a whole organism rather than separate parts. So there are
Mm-hmm.
more and more people realizing that, and that everything is whole, and that if you go
Yeah.
deep enough, right, you are not really that separate from me, right?
No.
You're
Yeah.
actually one. It's all one energy. But that
Yeah. Yeah.
that really messes with people, right? It messes with
It
people
does.
um, preconceptions of the world based on how we were
Mm-hmm.
raised. Um, you know, whether somebody was raised in an atheist home, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
anything spiritual is, you know,
Yeah.
stupid. Sometimes they think it's ignorant. You
Yeah.
know,
I've
um,
I've been raised kind of, well, not maybe atheist, but non-religious.
yeah.
Um, and I've tried to put myself in religious societies,
Hmm.
and I just never found something for me. And that is where I found spirituality now.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think it's just part of the whole thing. It's not separate really. It's just, terminology or the way you describe it.
Yeah.
Everything is kind of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just who we are. Spirituality isn't something we go find. It's just literally
No.
who you are as a being. You are a spiritual being.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I totally.
Absolutely agree with that. And I didn't, like, a year ago, I wouldn't say that. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I've been such a journey with this, so
yeah,
it's cool to be here where I am now.
yeah. That's so
Yeah.
funny, but nobody could have convinced you of that. It has to be
No.
experienced. It has to be
Yeah. Absolutely.
felt. I was actually having this conversation with my husband yesterday during dinner. Because you know, a lot of religions believe, you know, God's external outside of you, right?
Mm.
And I think that that creates a lot of suffering in this world,
Mm.
because sometimes instead of people creating their own lives, they're waiting on some external force to do something for them
Mm-hmm.
rather than using their own power, you know, and taking real aligned powerful action steps. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to him about it, and like how Deepak Chopra says, you know, you are the divine. You are the divine pretending to be a person.
Mm.
And I was like, and I totally get it if you're coming from like a religious perspective, if you were raised a certain way, that would totally eat somebody up, get totally tense, and want to fight with you because you have totally stepped out of line saying something like that. And
Mm.
um, I said, but for me, it doesn't feel that way anymore because it's something that needs to be experienced. And when you meditate and when you experience your own life force,
Mm-hmm.
you realize what that means. Like there's a part of you that realizes that there is this God in you,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's separate from you or it's the same or it's whatever, but there is a powerful force in you, however you want to see it. You are the divine, or God is within you, as a Christian would say, you know,
Mm.
lives in you, God abides in you, however you want to say it. But the most interesting part that I have found in my journey, because I actually come from a Christian background, is the realization that once I stopped thinking it was external outside of me and realized that power was within me, that's when my life changed the most.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
always, so I've always just have the question like, um, you all can keep saying that God is outside of you and that God,
Mm-hmm.
you have to pray to a God to do stuff for you.
Mm-hmm.
But all I can tell you is how come when I prayed to be healed from trauma, as I was told I should do, nothing happened. It is when I learned to go inward
Mm.
and change that energy myself and work on myself, that's when the change happened. And that's
Yeah.
the one thing I ever really say about that when you're having that kind of discussion with people who might disagree. So
Mm.
all I can say is that. And it's very interesting because some people so want to stay within their own perception of the world that
Mm-hmm.
they'll even say, well, that's evil and you shouldn't even be doing it, that that's the devil.
Yeah.
And I would just kind of think that's nonsense. How can healing be from the devil? And to be
Yeah.
clear,
Yeah.
I don't think there is a devil.
No, no.
um,
I can relate on another level. If I'm sorry if I'm
it's
interrupting.
okay. Yeah.
But it's a different story for me because I don't have a religious or Christian background as such. So I haven't really been taught to pray or taught to believe in something outside of myself.
Mhm.
So just the fact of believing in something is new for me, right?
Yeah.
Like, because when I was younger, I searched for something to believe in, but I didn't find it because everything, like, or most places, it's teachings of you need to pray to something, right? Like in religions.
Yeah.
But the biggest lesson for me was to kind of trust that it's in myself, as you experienced as well, but from a space before of not believing at all, you
Yeah.
know. So that is like a different perspective, but I'm in a crazy wonderful place right now concerning that. And
And how did I asked you before and you didn't actually
yeah.
say it. How did you get
Oh.
there? Like what made you even start
Oh
the
yeah.
of intuition? Because it is through intuition that we find our spirituality. They're
Mm,
connected,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
What made you, I don't know, was it a book? Like what even
I
got
think I think it started with a conversation.
you?
It started with a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, and the very first thing that sparked it, I'm going to see if I can find it. The very first thing that sparked it was her being very vulnerable with telling me stuff that I felt, oh my God, you really dare to say that to me? Am I that trustworthy somehow?
Yeah.
And then we just started to open up as friends, right? And we had deeper and deeper conversations. And she started talking about gratitude and about manifestation. And so I got curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this being vulnerable, or somebody being vulnerable to me so that I could feel that I had permission to be vulnerable and curious and open, and
Mm-hmm.
then exploring subjects that I was interested in because she was an exciting person.
Yeah.
And it was interesting things she had read about and studied and done. And, so I just got more and more curious from a space of trust and openness. And it just kind of grew from there, I think. And that's like 6 years ago or something, 5 or 6 years ago, we had this first conversation about this,
Yeah.
or this vulnerable conversation. And then I kind of tried to lean into it with my, I don't know if that is, I don't know if I want to believe this stuff. but the last year, it's just been a crazy, wonderful spiritual growth I felt due to, starting to teach myself to believe in the universe, in myself, in my inner being, in my intuition, and that. So it was a vulnerable moment that started the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that.
Yeah.
It's like once you've actually done the inner work, it's funny because people think being vulnerable hurts or being vulnerable is like
Mm.
hard. But really what it is once you've already done the inner work, it's just not hard at all. You're just being a person. Like you're actually being human for once. Honestly what
Yeah.
it is, you know?
Oh my God, that is so true. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's just all of the baggage, all of the junk we had inside of ourselves that we
Yeah.
just like hold on so tight to it. Like we're not going to tell anybody about our stuff, you know?
Yeah. Nobody will understand.
No.
But we do. We
Um,
do. We've
yeah,
been there.
yeah, we have. And pretty much
Yeah.
everybody has been there. But it is true, if you speak to somebody who hasn't done the inner work or who isn't
Mm.
reflective in some way, whatever you want to call it, nobody, not everybody calls it inner work or whatever,
Mm.
but they reflect on their life. If they reflect on
Mm.
their life, it's not weird. And I'm
No,
finding
not
that
at all.
even to be more and more and more true because my husband and I were both spiritual. We've always have been,
Mm.
but we don't do the exact same work necessarily. And you just find that there's actually so many paths to understanding and to kind of saying the same thing, just with different words. And I just
Mm.
find that so interesting because he's just always been into philosophy and he likes Carl Jung and things like this. And so that's the language he uses. And
Yeah.
while I read Carl Jung and I do that, I understand that stuff too. For my readings and stuff, I just align more with more of the Eastern often ways of speaking about things.
Mm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but
I,
it's
I
funny
can
because
relate.
we'll talk and it's like we're both saying the same thing, just we
Yeah.
say
Yeah. I
it
can absolutely relate to that. Well,
yeah.
my husband and I think very, very differently and see life from very, very different perspectives. And we've just agreed, like if you imagine a rock, like the way I see it, I
Mhm.
see a rock and see its potential and see, ooh, I could make like some jewelry or I could create some sculpture with this. And my husband, he looks at it and say, that's granite and that's, made of that. And it's been in the ground for so and so many years.
Yeah.
And that's our way of seeing life. And it's just such an important thing to know when we speak with each other, especially about like spiritual stuff, because we had a hard time starting to talk about the spiritual things because he's not spiritual at all.
Mhm.
And I even think he has some religious trauma, but that's a whole other story. So he is triggered when I talk about spirituality. So we've had to kind of, find our way to speak about things like energy, manifestation, spirituality, beliefs, and stuff in a
Mhm.
way that we both can agree on so we understand each other. And it's been a journey, but yeah, to see it from different perspectives is kind of fun, but also challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Mm.
It is wonderful, and I like that you guys are just finding ways to talk about things anyway. And I totally understand. Religious trauma. I think everybody has it. Well, I mean, you don't. You
Mm.
were raised in it, but
Mm.
think that anybody that was, I think they all have it, whether they see it or don't see it,
Mm.
just because there's something very damaging to the spirit to believe that you could possibly do anything to deserve to go to hell or
Mm.
to stop receiving love in some way,
Mm.
So I I often see that within religion, there's a lot of repression, and due to that, a lot of mental illness because people are trying to repress what they deem to be their sinful thoughts.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
so so I see a lot of trauma from religion because of
Yeah.
that, because it's better out than in, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Better
I don't
root
know if
than
that's
in.
what you meant with your husband, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
I understand like where he's coming from with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
Mhm.
good. I think it's good to find common grounds when you are so very different. like as a couple. I think now we're actually a completely different topic than intuition, but there we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
intuition led you to a different path from your husband, where initially I think you both didn't believe, right? And
yeah, yeah,
now you're having different thoughts about things, which is a very
yes,
interesting aspect of intuition, because the more you lean into it, the more you change, the more you led to things you didn't think about before or saw before.
yeah,
And that's what you're seeing in your life. Because, like you said, even a year
absolutely.
ago, all this stuff that I said, you would be like, that's nonsense.
Like, what are you talking about, woman?
Basically.
No,
Yeah, I guess you
yeah,
didn't
but
watch Oprah.
no, not really. I think I did as younger when I had a TV, but I don't do now. Well, I have a TV, but yeah, I
Yeah,
did, but not now.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Um,
So how
but right.
have you been using your intuition now? Like, when you say you're now working on it, in what
Hmm.
capacity do you really feel like, what are you looking for?
What I'm working for? Well, I am practicing using my intuition in my everyday life when
Mhm,
it comes to everything, actually. To like deciding anything and just being way more mindful of how I feel and what is coming to me and acting on that rather than just trying to, hustle and grind my way through life, but actually listen more
mhm,
and ask questions. Well, I do meditate a lot now and leave space for quiet time because I have known myself to, work myself half to death or distract myself even more if I didn't work. So I couldn't hear anything.
mhm,
Um, so I'm making sure that I have quiet times and spaces to listen. And I ask consciously and
mhm.
wait for answers more than I did before rather than just, you know, plan something and executing and doing things because they look logical. you know so it feels more like a flowy thing. Does
Mhm.
that make sense to you?
It does. That's
Like
what
I'm
people talk about.
listening more. Yeah,
People talk
listening
about
more, being
being
more.
in flow, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm practicing that
I love it. I love it. And
more and more.
what I noted that you said was that you're doing things even though they don't make logical sense, or even though they're
Yes.
not as practical, whereas before you used to do things because it seemed practical.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it had to make. I would have to see the outcome very clearly before I did anything before. But now I'm more trusting and open
Mhm.
and able to surrender the outcome
Yeah.
to whatever,
Yeah.
um, and follow the flow and intuition. I'm still practicing. I'm not. It's new for me, but I'm practicing and I'm loving it.
You know,
Yes.
the thought that I had just now when
Hmm.
you're talking about being practical and how that doesn't work, is that being practical would never ever work for anybody, in the sense that if you're doing something only because it seems practical, it only seems practical to you according to the current filters that you have
Hmm.
and the current beliefs
Yeah.
that you have. So
Absolutely.
that's why it wouldn't end up working, even though you think that it should, because it just seems like to your current belief system and filters. I
Absolutely.
think that.
Yes.
Whereas your
Absolutely.
intuition can help um, steer you, say things and stuff, and they're outside of your belief system,
Hmm.
outside of the
Yeah.
filters that you have.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way that you're saying that. Yeah. Because
Mhm,
I know that like doing things and planning things and doing things like and you have been taught and that you used to will create the same life that you've always been creating. Like I'm wanting to grow more and more, right? So if I keep doing the same things, I won't. So
mhm,
I have to do something different, and that lacking a word, then I need to be able to trust and surrender that when I do something else, that something else will come out of it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Because what I know, I only know what I know, and what I know will create more of what I know. So in order to do something else with my life, or try something new, or experience something new, I need to try something else and trust that it's good, or that it's working for me, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The only way you can create something new is by doing something new.
Yeah.
It's not going to be created out of doing the same old every day. You know,
Yeah.
I totally,
Yes.
totally. I I get into these thoughts sometimes when you're talking about all that, about what would the world look like if everybody followed their intuition and their inner
Mm.
list, and what would we actually have created right now, right?
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't have people, you know, when you go to the store or when you go somewhere, you wouldn't have employees who are like rude or basically
Mm.
don't want to be there because they're actually doing what they feel the call to do and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. At the same time, what's funny to me, just because I've done energy work for a while, is that, and I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before, but it's this weird dichotomy of where you're not really finding yourself, and there isn't really, like, to me anyway, this one thing you're supposed to do with your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, my way of thinking and what's worked for me and what's created a joyful life for me is the realization that I am the creator. So I just
Mm.
choose in moment to moment what do I want in my life versus trying
Yeah.
to find something. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people really get into suffering a lot when they think they're supposed to find their calling. And then I find that when people think that they have found their calling and it was given to them by God or something, and I find there to be an interesting, weird energy there,
Mm.
right? That sometimes gets into um, fundamentalism, like
Yeah.
people who
Yeah.
get a little too um, energetic about their purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah.
because that can happen, right? If you really,
Yeah.
and that leads to some people who believe God called them to do stuff, to do some very atrocious things, right?
Mm. Mm.
And it's very interesting that it kind of can start just from the rabbit hole of thinking you need to find something outside of yourself, or that even you need to find yourself in a weird way.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I I fundamentally believe that really we could do anything, and I always say that to people when people they're trying to figure out what to do with their lives. It's just like, well, what do you want to do? Because technically, and also, what do you need to do? Like, be practical. Sometimes you have to be practical. You have to pay bills, and sometimes
Mm.
people don't want to do what they have to do to pay their bills. They're kind of living in fantasy world a little bit about
Mm.
just dreaming, and that's
Yeah.
an
I've been there.
other thing that happens to people, and it can really take them down a really bad path because they're praying or they're surrendering and they're just thinking that it's somehow going to work out because
Mm-hmm.
they're surrendering,
Yeah.
and they end up not being able to pay their rent, uh,
Mm.
and then wonder why, and that takes people into an interesting depression or a downward path spiritually, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I always say this, and I totally believe it. um, I am okay with changing my energy to be whatever it needs to be to actually meet my needs that I need right now. So if I
Mm.
need to pay, if I were in that situation where I don't have money and I need to pay my bills, I wouldn't I wouldn't just sit there and wait on a dream, or wouldn't just sit there and just only focus on one thing. I would ask my
Mm.
intuition, what can I do right now to get me money now? And then
Mm-hmm.
to do it, you know, even if
Yeah.
it meant,
Yeah.
you know, get in your car, drive to so and so and apply for a job there. Okay, sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what your intuition does. It's a problem solver for you if you allow it to be. And then if you can do that from a space of gratitude, you
Mm-hmm.
can literally do anything. Like there are
Yes.
people who think that, you know, like I have a friend who right now is doing data analysis work, you know, where they put data entry in the system. And it was funny because I've never actually coached her, but I see her changing her mind around things when we have conversations. Like, for example, she wanted a job, um, and she wanted to work for the family business, but they weren't willing to pay her because they didn't have the money to pay her at the moment. And so she was trying to find somewhere else, even though that's what she really wanted to do. And I just looked at her and I said, that's how business works. You know, you have to actually go out there and find the money and then you get paid. Like you're not an employee. You know what I mean? It's not, people are used to being an employee and just getting this paycheck, you know, and not realizing how a business works. And I said, if this is your family business, I'm like, it's advantageous, whether you're getting paid or not, you're adding value to your family and your husband wants to grow this. So it's, if you're serious about your marriage, like you're going to stay together, you're not thinking of divorce, it's helping your whole family grow. You know what I mean? Whether you're getting paid for it or not. And, you know, once, you know, they find a way of creating those resources, you know, I'm sure you'll get paid. And it was so funny because um later, 2 weeks later or something, she's like, I'm going to work, blah, blah, blah. She's doing that. And I'm like, cool, are you getting paid? She's like, no, but I'm okay with it. And we had that conversation, you know what I mean?
Thank
And then we start, and then she was talking about like the kind of position she has, like she's putting in data, and about how, because we already had talked about how like a business has multiple layers and that it's all purposeful and like it's all helping the community and all this stuff, right? And so she looked at me and she said, you know, old me would have never wanted to be a data analyst or data researcher, whatever they're calling her, but somebody that puts data into the
Oh
computer.
no, I lost you. Hold on.
Oh,
I think maybe it's this one.
yeah. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I can't hear you because when you take that off, I can't hear you.
There, now you can hear me, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
Yes.
the funny part was that she we spoke about it, and she was telling me how old her would have never wanted to be a data analyst because she would thought
Mm.
that was a very mundane job and that she, you know, would want to do something better than that or more than that, you know?
Yeah.
And I just looked at her and I said, yeah, that's how employees tend to think. They think it's just a mundane job and they don't want to be there. But when you're a business owner, you realize that it's all important. If I'm a business owner, why am I going to hire you if it's just a mundane job that's not important? It's very important to me. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I need to have my files organized. I need to have, I know who my clients are, my customer base is. That's what she's
Mhm.
doing with the data entry, right?
Yeah.
All of that. And so, and she just, and so we talked about all of that, and she just got to that new place of like understanding that it is important, and that it's
Yeah.
actually plays a big important part in the family business. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just, I'm saying that to say that like somebody who came thinking this way, and then if she just kept thinking that way, might end up just keep dreaming and fantasizing and only thinking of other things, um, versus realizing that there's more to the picture. And she
Mhm.
is still, you know, wanting to do certain things and stuff, but she's expanding into it. That she has her reasons for wanting to be a part of the family business. Like she actually, that was her dream, but she didn't want to start at the bottom, you know?
Mhm.
And so long term, she wants to have a different position within the family business, and they're working on that with her, right? But all of that to say is that what I've realized is that if people stop thinking about their job as just being mundane or just
Mhm.
being not important or this or that, and just had gratitude for their job that it's providing a roof over their head, and then had gratitude for every face that comes through their door,
Mhm.
whether you're like a retail person or whatever, just always having fun talking to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
it would be such a completely different experience. And so there's this dichotomy of you're not really in needing to find a purpose. It's more of how can you change your energy to be what you need it to be for what you need right now. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying anybody needs to be a retail or whatever forever, but if that's the space you're in, how can you be in gratitude and in service and be happy now
Mm-hmm.
to then
Yeah.
help you get to the other steps too? And
Yeah.
you keep tweaking and changing your energy to then get to whatever it is you're trying to get to.
Yeah. I think that is so important, that thing. I don't know. You say the word, you've said the word dichotomy twice, and I don't really know what it means, but I think I have an
But
idea. Dichotomy.
what did I say?
Dichotomy? I don't know that word. But
Like dichotomy is like when there's, and so for anybody who's watching, Parnuna, that English is not her native language, but she sounds like it is, doesn't she? Dutch is, right?
I'm from Denmark.
Yeah.
I live in Denmark. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, dichotomy is like when you have two different things, and it's a dichotomy. Like
conflict, or like,
let me just Google the word. It's hard to explain to me anyway.
Okay, but while you Google it, I just want to say it's so important what you're saying there, and the way that you described how everything is important in a business. I'm asking you, can you do a post on that? Because I think that is so important. I had not thought about business like that. Like when I see an established business, I don't think about all the small parts that are so important. And in my own business as well, as all the little things, they're all important. And the people that do them are also extremely important, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a new perspective to see it, from that angle, because I've not heard it before, spoken out loud. So thanks for saying that. That was cool. And it's just so important that you, wherever you are in life, well, that's my opinion and my view on life, is that you should always try to find that angle that suits you best. Oh, I think what you're saying with energy, direct the energy to a feeling better place wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
So first things first, dichotomy means a division or contrast between two things that are or are represented as being opposed or entirely different. So like a rigid dichotomy between science and mysticism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So so yeah, I love that you said that this opens up that idea, right? Because I don't know how it happened. I really honestly don't know how it happened, but there's just this narrative right now in the collective consciousness, and people are suffering and they're in so much pain and not happy, and they think it's because of their job. And I would beg to differ. You do this first, you know what I mean? And your job, whether you're a waitress or a garbage man or whatever you are, it's all part of what makes this society beautiful. Like because whenever people talking about purpose and everybody wants to be like the next Oprah or something like that, I always think of that kind of world. Do I want to live in a world where everybody's Oprah? No, I do not. How am I going to get my food? You know what I mean? Like, where's my food coming from? Oprah doesn't cook. She's not cooking for you. You know what I mean? But not just that, but I mean, she farms, but she doesn't farm for everybody, the whole world. You know what I mean? Like, where am I going to get groceries? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have this weird energy. And the only place I can trace it from is just people listening a little bit too much to Tony Robbins and all of this kind of thinking, where it's about quitting your 9 to 5 and creating this idea of what a business is. And they never actually tell you how much work it actually is to have a business. And so then you have people quitting their 9 to 5, which is a stable paycheck that you know is coming every week. And then they realize, oh my gosh, now all of the income is on me. Oh my gosh, this is stressful. I didn't realize this is what business is, because people have only been selling to me the cool sounding parts. They haven't like told me like what it's really about. I have to create my own income. I have to somehow figure out where are my next clients coming from, or where this or that. And so then they don't have a concept of any of that. And I just feel
I started there. Absolutely. I was sold the dream. Whoa, drink Mai Tais on the beach. And I was like, I don't even go to the beach. I don't enjoy, I'm not a beach person. And I don't even know if I like Mai Tais. Come on.
It's so funny. And I just feel, if people really understood what's going on, and that all that money is providing value. And if you have money, that means you've provided somebody value. And if you have a little bit, that means you've provided a little bit of value. If you have a lot of it, that means you have provided a lot of value. You've helped thousands and thousands of people, right? Oprah the billionaire, thousands and thousands of people have been helped by her, you know? And so I feel like if people really understood that, then they wouldn't care so much if they were an employee, because then, oh, I'm providing value. I'm helping here, this company do this. And if I do it well, more people are going to come into this business, and it's going to be good for everybody. We all get to keep our jobs. And there's like here in the United States specifically, and maybe it's there true, there's this disconnect between your job is giving you money and you want your job to exist. There's kind of this weird disconnect between it, in the sense that people talk really badly about corporations here and businesses. And it's like, I don't understand, where's your paycheck coming from? Isn't it coming from a business? You know, so there's this real weird disconnect where they somehow think they would still somehow get money if the businesses cease to exist. And it's my husband and I talk about it, and it's almost as if people just don't think that far somehow. They just think of only going to their job and they get a paycheck. They don't think, well, what has created this system that creates money? So I get paid.
That is interesting.
We got a little bit sidetracked there, but we've talked about a lot of different things in philosophy and economy.
I think it's very interesting. It's very enjoyable having a conversation with you. I think we could, in reality, we could keep going for a long time.
It is time to end our conversation. I enjoyed this conversation. We went everywhere, and it might seem like it's like, how did we didn't stick to intuition as much as I have in other previous videos that you can link to down below somewhere and look at them if you're wanting to talk more about see more about those things here on the YouTube. But it's funny though, even though it doesn't seem that way, when you are actually listening to your intuition, it does do this with you. So we just did it through conversation. But intuition very much is not a linear path at all. At least not mentally. Like it doesn't.
I don't think anything is linear, really. So it's just following the natural order of things. The flow, you know.
So thank you so much, Parnuna, for talking with me. If anybody wants to find you, where can they find you?
Feel Good Rebel everywhere.
That's your website, Feel Good Rebel.
Feel Good Rebel, and it's a Danish website. So I conduct business in Danish. I do have an Instagram as well. I have some English posts, and I I do speak English, and fortunately on Facebook it translates my Danish stuff to English when I write. So Feel Good Rebel, yeah. And
Yeah,
I
it
have
just, yeah. It just doesn't help me when you're doing your lives.
no, no. It doesn't instant translate to English,
No, no, but
unfortunately.
you can read her post on Facebook and on Instagram, and Feel Good Rebel. So they can, if they just type in Feel Good Rebel, you'll pop up,
Yeah.
or should go feelgoodrebel.com.
Now feelgoodrebel.dk because it's in Danish.
DK,
Yeah.
like D as in donut, K as in kangaroo.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. Wonderful. Because I know that it's not, you know, people type it in, it might not necessarily pop up, especially
Yeah.
in other
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
They'll probably, you know, instead direct them to things that are here in the United States if they're here in the United States.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I am so grateful for you. I appreciate you. Maybe we can do this again some other time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it too, very much so. And I appreciate you too.
Yay, thank you. And for anybody watching, if this sparked any interest in you, any questions, please type them down below and we will totally get back to you, and let's just keep the conversation flowing. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.